Hope you guys are all doing well. So, never again is now. That is not even a statement that makes sense. I'm sorry. If it was never again, it wouldn't be now. Here's the thing, right? I always said that it's a waste of time to talk about how it'll never happen again, because the only people that are listening are and agreeing are the ones that are sure it'll never happen again. But once things change and the climate changes or the type of people change that would, God forbid, make it happen again, then it wouldn't really matter to say never again is now. So it's just like a pointless statement. But okay, let's go with that. Never again is now. I don't want to sound like arrogant, like I always prophesized that like that statement didn't make sense. And I thought like, is that an arrogant statement? But then I realized, there's a famous prophet who predicted something, and then it was the downfall of the Jews, and he was warning everyone. And I think that we all have little pieces and sparks of different things. And if you see something, it's not being arrogant to show that we all have little things that we notice. And I was thinking it's not arrogant, but like I'm 50 years old. I've been saying this my whole life, that like never again is not a statement that makes sense, because you're only like declaring it to the wrong group of people. And look at the kind of people that have all of a sudden evolved that don't really look like they care about that statement. I want to make a couple of points. First of all, the soldiers in Israel versus the campuses. I am very, very against the age of fighting. You send somebody into the reserves, they're young, they have the weight of the entire nation on their shoulders, yet they're not old enough to buy themselves a drink in New York. They're not mature enough, their brains are not fully developed, and they're saving the country, and all these big shots, hot shots, are calling the shots from behind. The oldest fighters you have are maybe in their 30s, besides obviously in the situation now with the reserves and everything. And then look at the campuses. How ironic. You could be so critical of the other side with the Gaza protesters and whatever you want to call these nuts, that they're not even aligned with the average Muslim's opinion, most of them. But guess what? It's ironic, isn't it? How the soldiers and the campuses, same age group, same brain development, and this is the future of our world. It's something to think about. So while you're thinking, who are they to be creating future policy, and like people are saying, these people are making protests at their law school graduation, this is the future of our country. Well, hey, you have kids in Gaza, Israeli soldiers, that they're not ready for it either. I do think it's interesting that we finally in America feel what the Israelis have felt, meaning we could always relate and be sympathetic to the fact that they're always at danger, at risk. They live in a life where they have to learn to just enjoy the moment and not be scared of what might come. And how ironic that we are now living very similar to the way they're living. Obviously, thank God, not yet, or hopefully it won't happen, that there's bombings and random killings and things like that. Although, as we see, guns are starting to show up at protests, and beatings are starting to happen. And what happened by Eurovision is just insane, a whole mob, But it's just interesting that you can't really relate until you start to feel it, even a taste of it in your own backyard. I want to end off by saying something that seems very obvious, but I don't think anybody's done it. I want to explain our position as a Jew, because everybody has a different opinion. It's Palestine, it's Israel, when did it start, who started it, whatever. Let's start from the beginning. Let's explain our opinion. As it stands in our generation, without going all the way back into history, because we can debate it, the fact is that I was born into a world where there was a country called Israel. And in Israel, they had these issues, what we would call, I guess, refugees in America. You have these Palestinians and all these different types of people, not all necessarily Palestinian, and they tried their very best to make it work. As it's very well known, had there been peace, I personally blame their leaders because they trained them to grow up where now they're already second and third generation in, full of hatred. Their Sesame Street has rifles in it, murder, hatred of Jews. And so then we learned to try to have a little more trust with the Arabs in East Jerusalem and so on and so forth. We have so many Muslim, Arab, Palestinian employees that either live in Israel or come across the border regularly. I know it might seem like, oh, how can they live the way they do when they live in these, like Gaza and West Bank and these areas that seem like they're being in like an internment camp. But on the other side of the coin, nobody's forcing them to stay there. All that has to happen is the rest of their Arab world needs to come to a solution. But nobody's even at the table to discuss a plan. It's just Israel alone, and everybody's mad at them. So it's not that when they put out all these numbers of there's so many millions of Muslims and so few Jews and so many square miles, it's not about that. It's about why don't they come to the table and try to help us find a solution? We're taking care of these people, we, not me. But I guess if you're Jewish, you're a Zionist nowadays, I guess we are talking about me. I have no clue why. But what I will say is that Israel is really, really trying to keep a balance of peace with people that want to destroy them. That's how it's been last year, before all these wokes woke up. This is how it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 25 years ago, and a half a century ago, and it doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon. They're trying to stop the enemy from attacking them. It's their country. If you don't like it, then go back to fighting the Indians over American territory. But the fact is, we live in the present, not the past. So let's forget about the Bible for a moment and all of that. Just from a logical point of view, Israel belongs to the Israelis. And what we need is to get along. And I know that sounds very immature, naive, and childish, but it's really not. What needs to happen is for people to stop thinking in terms of winning, stop thinking in terms of enemy and animosity, and start thinking in terms of let's go back to the way things were. And I am a big believer, if nothing else, that you can fix things. That's where I'm very different than most people. I don't think we're headed for this, we're headed for that. Nah, people say we're 3 meals away from a world war, right? If you're short 3 meals and people will start going at each other. We're also 10 seconds away from going back to peace, always. We could work this out. What needs to happen is for people to change their opinion. Like those little shakers, of like a little New York City or something, and then the white stuff, the snowflakes come to the top. Whenever the world gets a little crazy, the crazy always come to the top. Forget about them. The rest of us, we need to go back and learn and be better. Life never stays the same. My rabbi always said that it either gets better or worse. We can make it better. This world could improve as a result of this to tremendous levels. I've made friends with more Muslims over the past few months than ever in my life. Such fine people, such peace-loving people, not idiots running around. Oh, I didn't touch you, you touched me, I'm pushing you, you're pushing me. The way these guys fight in the campuses and like with their phones, and they're almost touching and putting lines and just trying to push the angle a little bit on legality. But they can't just punch a guy in the face and get the arrest for it. Like, grow up. If you're gonna fight a rebellion, then be a rebel. Not that, I'm telling you should be, but it's all nonsense. At the end of the day, the rest of us, the like 99.9, we need to don't let this affect us. I forgot what the word for it is, but everybody watches the news nowadays. That suits them. When we were kids, we were fed the news. We had like 3 channels of news, and they were all pretty much concurring. We got to go back to a world where we see that things can really work out peacefully. We got to stop the fighting, got to stop blaming the Israelis. Come on, put yourself in their shoes. I know it's hard. I know you might have a relative that was affected by them, but come on, be realistic. But most of all, never again, no such thing. There is no never again. And whatever will be different. Have a great one, and love to hear your comments.